Hey Techno Studs! One of the things that a security program does is establishes policies, standards, procedures, guidelines, and controls. But what are all those things? Let's jump into it in this video. In this video, the first thing that we'll do is define what each one of those terms are. Then we're going to start applying it so we can see exactly how it's applied. I'm going to give you, first of all, an example, a baking example, so that way you can see how it applies in maybe something that's not tech related. Then we're going to get into a tech related example. So what is a policy, standard, procedure, guideline, and control? Well, all these come together to create the expectations of what the company is going to do or the organization is going to do, how it's going to perform, and in this case from a cybersecurity standpoint. So let's talk about each one of these. First of all, what needs to be set is the big overall scoping. What are we trying to accomplish? That's what policies do. Policies are set by the execs or higher up, the board of directors, somewhere at a higher level sets the policy of what are we trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish cybersecurity, but what is the big overall scoping? What are we trying to do? Then we get into, okay, how are we going to accomplish that? What are the standards that we are going to hold the company to? So that's where the standards come into play. So where there's quite a few policies, there are a lot of standards. For each one of these policies, you could have many different standards. And the standards are going to be created by the security team of what is going to be expected from the company. And it's going to get a lot more detailed with it. From there, we have the standards of what we're trying to accomplish. We're going to develop procedures. The procedures are the processes that we are going to use, that the individuals are going to carry out to implement the standards, to make sure we're following the standards. So that's the procedures. And then we get into the guidelines. The guidelines are something that is not necessarily steadfast. It's not like a standard where we have to meet the standard. It's not like a procedure where we got to follow this procedure. A guideline is more of suggestions on ways that we can implement it for the best success. Then we have controls. Let's address controls a little separately here. Controls can be a little bit trickier to define. And if you look at different resources out there, there are some different perspectives of what controls are. So I'm going to go over three different definitions of it, or three different perspectives of what a control is. The first two is going to be what some perspectives are out there, and the third one is going to be the actual definition of what a control is. So first of all, one thing that what people view controls as is all of these things. All of these things are controls. So it's just a general term that's used about how you're going to manage the cybersecurity program of the company or organization. So the next definition of controls is going to be that it's synonymous with standards. A lot of people use these terms interchangeably. And the reason why is because there's a lot of similarities between controls and standards. Standards set whatever that bar is going to be, that's what a standard set. Controls do the same thing, but it does it to another degree. So that's our third definition. A control is what your outcome is going to be. So a control defines what is the end expectation going to be, or how are you going to measure all of this? It will be more clear as we go over the examples of what a control is and how it takes the standards and defines it to a greater degree. Let's go over a baking example to see really what these terms mean. So first of all, I'm going to have a policy. I'm going to have a policy for my family that I'm going to bake delicious desserts on a regular basis. So some key things to this is, number one, it's it's got to be delicious. All right. So there's some interpretation that happens here, some vagueness that happens here that I'm going to have to further define as we go along. The next thing is dessert. So I'm not specifying cakes, just that I'm going to cook desserts. So they could be donuts, they could be pies, they could be cakes, they could be, there's a big range of what we can accomplish with this. And then it needs to be on a regular basis. I don't define how regular it needs to be, but I'm going to say it's going to be on a regular basis. And so next comes the standard. So what is my standard? Well, I could have lots of standards with this. I could have one week maybe I do a cake, the next week I'm going to do donuts, the next week I'm going to do pies. So I could have lots of standards that fall under this to meet this policy. But in this particular case, I just took out one of those, and I have one standard here that I'm going to do a cake on a monthly basis. So I'm further defining what this standard is going to be, and I'm going to bake a cake on a monthly basis. I'm still specifying that it's going to be delicious here and that the whole family can enjoy. So what is the procedure then? Well, the procedures is going to be what is the process I'm actually going to do to follow through with this. So maybe I'm going to put something on my calendar as part of the procedure to make sure that it happens, or the recipe that I'm going to follow. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that I could go with this, but essentially it's the process that I'm going to go through to make sure that I'm following the standard, that I'm doing it on a monthly basis, that it's going to be delicious, that I'm going to follow, in this example, follow a recipe, and it's going to be on the calendar. So then I'm going to have some guidelines. The guidelines are stuff that's not so prescriptive. It's things that's just going to help me out along the way. Maybe one of the guidelines is that I'm going to preheat the oven before mixing the ingredients. This is going to save me time. So an order of operations here, so that way I'm not mixing all the ingredients and then have to wait for the oven to heat up. So it just can be a guideline of how to improve the experience or how to meet the rest of this criteria. And then I have a control. So the control, once again, is the little bit trickier one here, but think about measurable outcomes in the end. How am I going to actually know that I've accomplished the goal? So I'm going to write out the control saying cakes will be baked on a monthly basis that the whole family would rate at least a 7 out of 10 on a deliciousness scale. So now I have something specific around that deliciousness, how delicious it's going to be. And what do I have to do to prove this? Well, in this case, maybe I send out a survey, or maybe I just do it verbally and say, okay, how did we like this? I baked a different cake this time. What would you rate it? Oh, you rated it as a 6? Well, we didn't accomplish this goal this month. And so maybe I have to rebake a different cake that would be rated higher. Maybe I bake a cake that I've baked in the past that I know the family would enjoy. So this is the control, and it's a measurable outcome at the end that we will use as a measuring stick to see if we are following through with what we say we're going to follow through with. This is a cybersecurity course, so we should apply this to something more technical. And here's an example of patching. So one of the policies that we may have is we will perform maintenance on all hardware and software. So once again, it's more of a vague statement. It's more of an upper level. This could even be more general than that. So policies, there's a lot of leeway on, it could just be, we have a cybersecurity program and we're going to make things secure, or we're going to follow the industry standards of what's expected from a cybersecurity standpoint, or, fill in the blank. So in this example right here, I just say we will perform maintenance on all hardware and software. One of the many standards that we have to meet this policy is a standard that says machines will be patched on a monthly basis. What are the procedures? Well, these are the actual steps that we are going to follow through to patch this. So we're going to log into the patching server. We are going to research any updates that are presented to us. We're going to approve those updates. We're going to roll things out. So these are all the steps that we're going to go through to make sure that the machines are patched. What are the guidelines? Well, one of the things that we need to do is we need to research updates to see if it's an update we actually want to roll out. So what's not part of this is, well, how do we rate whether we want to roll out a policy or a patch or not? And so we have to go through this guideline that says approve all updates that have no known issues. So I look out there and I say, oh, this patch doesn't have any known issues, I'm going to approve it. Or maybe it does, maybe it has some known issues. Then I need to assess, is this something that it's worth the risk in rolling this out even though there's a known update, or is it better to hold back? And so I need to assess that. It's a judgment call. So this guideline helps me out with that judgment call. And then if there's still an issue, if I'm still unsure, then I can seek guidance from the rest of the team to see what they say about it. So then I can go and do that, and we could all vote, or we can all go through the process to see whether we should roll this patch out or not. So then what is the control? Once again, the control is, what is our desired outcome? Well, it's probably not reasonable to make sure that 100% of our machines are done on a monthly basis. So we need to get a little more granular with this. So what is the actual expectation? Well, we can at least hit 95% of the machines. So 95% of the machines must be patched within a month. And then any machines that are not patched within 60 days, we have to remove from the network, whether we're removing them from Active Directory or removing them so they can't access the network, or we could define that further as well. But anyways, we have some sort of standards here. And then we need proof that we're actually following these standards, that we're actually following these controls. So maybe a printout or a report of the patching from the patching software that says where all the machines are at, and from a patching perspective, and to make sure that we're following this. So it's something that I can turn over to, let's say, like an auditing agency. So that's where these controls really come into play, is that an auditing agency can come in and say, what are your controls? Are they appropriate for the size of business and type of business that you are? And are you actually following them? Show us proof that you are actually following through with these controls. That's what a control is that I can present proof to show that I am actually doing what I say I'm going to do. So there you have it. The policies set the direction of where we're heading with cybersecurity. The standards is what we have to meet those policies, those expectations. The procedures is the process we're going to use to meet those standards. The guidelines are there to help us make determinations, make judgment calls. And the controls is that final outcome. What are we measuring in the end to prove that we're following through with what we say we're going to follow through with, that we are doing cybersecurity correctly?